Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's P&G Alumni Network Enrichment webinars. This is your host, Liliana Rojas, and I hope you're all safe and well. And today I'm very excited for our guest, Phil Duncan, who will share with us how to connect the best physical and digital consumer experiences. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you to Phil Duncan. Phil leads P&G's global design discipline in transforming the strategies of the company's 10 product categories into superior holistic consumer experiences. Working seamlessly from innovation to execution, his organization applies design thinking and technical expertise to all aspects of package, product, retail, digital, and environment design. Phil, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'll pass it on to you.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Perfect. So first, before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to say, thank you for the invitation for coming. It's a real privilege and honor, an odd environment by which to meet and see all of you for sure. But it's been a real privilege to be in this role as Chief Design Officer now for, gosh, almost a dozen years, serve on the GLC. But honestly, it's been the biggest privilege of working with people that are just so talented across the organization and frankly across the company. And again, so many people in this network I know have been a part of my career. So, thank you for all the gifts that you've given me. I hope I do you justice today as I talk about some really powerful platforms that we've been building in the company to really resonate with our consumer and our customers. And that is around our PNG Life Lab, in particular, how we stepped out and talked about innovation at the major platform called CES. And then I'll talk a little bit about where we're going in the future with this platform too. So without further ado, I will grab the screen here. Hopefully you can see my first screen. Liliana, are we okay? We good?
We're okay, we're perfect.
Excellent, all right, good. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, unlocking future growth through this notion of connecting the best of both physical and digital or virtual experiences, which is something that, unfortunately, I think the past, 14, 15 months have been obviously incredibly impactful in the context of certainly the world's global health, but also for businesses like ours to figure out how to reach the consumer in provocative and safe ways, how to continue to build and create innovation, how to connect with audiences in powerful constructs, all the while making sure that we're staying true to our principles as a company of keeping our employees safe, and really showing up as a force for good and force for growth. So it was just a few years ago actually that we were in a period of, exiting I guess a few years of kind of frankly a slower growth construct. We weren't kind of hitting the numbers that I think all of us would have expected as a company. We saw a shifting competitive landscape on innovation, and particularly those that were stepping out and looking actively for partners who were, driving a lot of their innovation reputation externally as well as through their product portfolios. We saw an opportunity for unlocking new partnerships for future innovation. The consumer was becoming much more connected. Digital devices with Internet of Things constructs were coming up around us, and we felt the need to make sure that we were opening up our innovation processes to external partners who could really help us solve these growing and enhancing consumer challenges. We were embracing lean innovation, and for those of you who might be closer to the company in the recent years, understand that we branded that program a GrowthWorks program. We were really understanding how to experiment, how to get out to market faster, and do so in a kind of lean-oriented way, so we could quickly iterate and pivot and create even better ideas as we went along that kind of development journey. We had a growing portfolio of terrific connected and smart products. And there was a growing sentiment that we felt like there was an opportunity for us to lean in and think about using various methodologies for how to launch, if you will, innovation. Going back decades, our notion of, stocking the store shelves and then turning on the advertising and reaching consumers in that way was effective. But obviously now there's so many more interesting and challenging and opportunistic ways for us to launch innovation, and particularly using influencers, thinking about how we start to drive anticipation for upcoming innovation. And these were all things that were starting to set the stage for eventually our decision to go and step into CES, or the Consumer Electronics Show, with our LifeLab proposition. I can remember very vividly getting a phone call. I'm sure many of you can relate to the moments where all of a sudden you feel like I'm being voluntold here to do something. But Kathy Fish, Mark Pritchard, Javier Polit, all were in a meeting, and we're talking about the possibility of going to CES, and not just in kind of participating and viewing and seeing, but actually exhibiting. And so I got a phone call to join the meeting, and I walked out suddenly owning our proposition to go forward and figure out how we would effectively use the CES platform as a way for us to drive our innovation reputation and launch kind of new innovations. So that certainly was setting the stage in an interesting way. CES, for those of you who don't know, is an annual technology showcase in Las Vegas. I'm sure many of you who are really based in the States understand this kind of platform. It's relatively big, 4,500 companies showcased with over 1,700 people in attendance. And it's a huge media place that really kind of sets the innovation agenda for a lot of dynamics, certainly in the US, but also globally in terms of showcasing new innovation. So we decided to go to CES for a whole host of reasons, but really our core objectives were to enhance our brand and company reputation as an innovation leader, to deepen our partnerships with customers and other innovators, attract partners, again, as I mentioned earlier, and drive purchase and pre-order of our new innovations and attract top talent in STEM. No small feats for our objectives for going in. And then I can remember also sitting down with David Taylor and kind of reviewing the program with him. And he hilariously kind of turned to me at the end and he said, "I really like the objectives, Phil, but like this thing's got to be really cool." So I said, David, if I can't do cool for you, then I think I'm in the wrong job. Off we went to develop what was kind of our platform here called the Life Lab, the PNG Life Lab, which was a wonderful environment for us to come, showcase not only as a company, but also to allow our individual brand innovations to really be showcased. One of the other design criteria that we put forward for this kind of consumer experience was one of allowing for our innovation to kind of come together again to celebrate the portfolio coming from P&G, but also to, frankly, focus our consumer on our story. So you can kind of see that we've built this enclosed construct because the noise out on the CES kind of floor is incredible. But our Life Lab proved to be a fantastic way to invite influencers, invite innovators into our world, understand the kind of innovation that we were developing, as well as particularly come to us and talk about ways in which they could partner or might like to partner with us for future innovation. So during the course of our couple of executions on the floor at LifeLab or on the floor at CES, we were able to feature some really terrific innovation that was particularly breakthrough and transformative in a lot of the categories in which we compete. We had the Opte skin system. I can't go into too many details about it today, but it's a fantastic brand that has been in development for many years in the company. The heated razor from Gillette, Lumi by Pampers, our Oral-B kind of smile station, a new product from home care called Area, and our Oral-B IO technology, which our oral care business has just been fantastic in terms of our support and integration within the CES program. And then, ironically, this was our execution last year. We brought our Oral-B Smile Station kind of Winnebago or Airstream, and kind of unbelievably in today's environment, we brushed the teeth of probably 1,000 people live on the floor at CES for people to really get a firsthand understanding of our breakthrough innovation on Oral-B IO. But in today's environment, I can't even imagine, brushing 1,000 people's teeth in some sort of public forum like this. It was kind of incredulous when you think about how much the world has shifted since just, January of 2020. But also the CES platform proved to be a fantastic place for us to, showcase our leaders and to drive a leadership innovation message. And whether that was in areas of breakthrough product innovation, sustainability, our integration of technology, our clear focus on consumer innovation that really solve challenges in consumers' lives. Our executive leadership obviously showed up and did a fantastic job of helping us to not only be an influencer at CES, but to really be a leader. So, just to kind of summarize, our first couple of years of executing, at CES were really incredible. We had amazing quality impressions from around the world. We trended in China with some of our innovations. We had, amazing media placements, reaching over 90 markets with our content, our social media impression. Importantly, though, too, we were able to connect and talk with over 500 partners who were interested in partnering with us to think about and solve some of our key challenges from an future innovation standpoint. We integrated some fantastic customer meetings. So we were able to showcase to some of our biggest customers what our new innovation was and how they could become a part of making those innovations even bigger with their shoppers. We were awarded lots of innovative awards, and the exhibit itself was given its high marks, which obviously made me very proud. But also, importantly, driving purchase intent, and internally, it was certainly a huge hit. And so we felt like we had, quite a model on our hands for how to think about, launching and celebrating innovation and connecting with consumers and in a new and provocative way. And then, the world changed. In the pandemic hit, the incredible health crisis that faced the world, and really challenged us as a company to kind of reset priorities. And David and the leadership team, we were very clear that the very most important kind of priority for us was to keep our employees and partners safe, so that we could make, pack, and ship the products that consumers so needed to keep their homes happy, healthy, hygienic. And then the third to be, to show up and really help in communities in need. And so this really began to obviously, this was a core focus of the company and remains such in these times. And it really did challenge us to think, regarding, CES 2021 and our Life Lab, what would be our reason to go? And it was, I guess, March of last year, we called CES and said, we really don't see a way that we could exhibit safely and keep our employees and partners safe. So unless you're willing to think about a technology platform where we could virtually experience, our innovation, we don't feel that we can come. So I think we were on the leading edge of that message to CES. It was not met with the warmest of responses in the early months. And then really by September, they called and said, we think we're going to do CES all virtually. Are you still interested in participating? And so we kind of stepped back and thought, like, what would be our rationale? What would be our reason to go? And you've heard us talk a lot about this notion of disruptive innovation and disrupting ourselves to really rethink how we were engaging with consumers, influencers. So we said, let's approach CES 2021 as a bit of an experiment. Look at how we could reinvent, but keep true the same experience that we built physically, but do so obviously in a virtual context. So we were off to build the PNG Life Lab every day. Here's a quick look at the kind of digital environment that was built off of a gaming platform. But Ileana, I'm going to turn it back to you because we're going to showcase the first video so you all can get a view of what the virtual Life Lab looked like.
Okay, give me 1 second. Back to you, Phil.
All right, are we good?
Yes, we're good.
Excellent. Okay, good. Well done, Liana. So you saw really quickly a quick glance of our virtual PNG Life Lab built on a gaming platform where you would create an avatar of yourself and you could enter the Life Lab and experience firsthand our innovations. And here are some of the things that we're really featuring, things that were really important to the consumer right now around how they were creating a healthy, happy, hygienic home environment, but also driving sustainability into our message. So we had everything from our 50-liter home, coalition that we were highlighting, to a lot of the products that really help consumers to again challenge them, help them solve the challenging construct of making sure their home was healthy and hygienic, but also that they were doing good for the environment at the same time. So the environment was a real hit. I will say one of the things that was probably most provocative about the platform that was similar to the physical environment was the opportunity for you to engage avatar to avatar in a conversation with P&G employees and P&G innovators. And that was a real differentiator. It was something that was true when we did the physical Life Lab at Las Vegas. People were blown away that they were actually speaking to the innovators that were part of the development of the technology that we have brought to CES, or the technologists or the marketers, what have you. And we recreated that same experience in our virtual Life Lab. And we probably addressed for the first day a lot of questions like, are you a bot? Are you a robot who is responding to me? People were really blown away that through this technology that we use, that we were able to create more personal engagements and again, speak to the innovators and the marketers who are behind a lot of these great innovations, and keeping true that kind of construct that we were trying to create a wonderful kind of visitor experience that really showcased not only the innovation, but the diverse people of P&G who bring those innovations to life. We also importantly integrated some major platforms that were important to us in our digital environment, everything from recruiting to our P&G Ventures team, our Connect and Develop team, and major company platforms around our P&G Good Every Day, our Lead with Love campaign that recently launched. And all of these were embedded in our digital environment, which was pretty impressive that we were able to, from, excuse me, from like September to January, not only showcase some really terrific innovation, but also bring major company platforms to bear inside of our Life Lab experience. We also had some really terrific customer engagements. So as we began to understand that there would obviously not be a physical means by which we could integrate our customer experiences with us at the Las Vegas showcase, we quickly pivoted and began inviting a lot of our top tier customers to have a virtual experience with us. And I will say it was a fabulous dynamic that actually, by virtue of it being a virtual experience, we probably had more people joining this session because of the ability to access the platform. We did a wonderful, sustainability kind of partnership join up with Walmart We had probably 45 people from the Walmart team go through the virtual environment with us, with Shailesh Jadurkar, and then also with our chief sustainability officer in Virginie Elias. So they were able to meet them live and meet them in avatar form, as well as go through the wonderful experience that we had created around sustainability, particularly the 50-liter home. So suddenly we were beginning to see that this was a way for us to continue to engage with customers in a provocative way that demonstrated that P&G was connected with the future of how we as a group of people are going to be connecting and learning about brands and companies in the future in a virtual world. So I'm going to toss it back to you one more time, Ileana, to play what we kind of use as a kickoff for our CES program. We call it our Sizzle Reel that highlights our brands and major platform experiences that were being created. It's a kind of a signature piece that kind of we use at the beginning of our program to hook people in about the excitement we have for our innovations.
Perfect. Oh. Give me 1 second. back to you. Definitely makes us miss our P&G days. Some of the comments out there. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay, perfect. Hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
I'm showing my screen. All right, perfect. So yeah, hopefully the music got you started wherever you are in your day. It's a wonderful way for us to showcase our specific brand innovations, but you saw a lot of our important company platforms and things like our 2030 sustainability goals were embedded within that, our Force for Good and Force for Growth activities around things that, addressing biases in the sexual orientation or sexual identification or gender biases or racial inequities. And so the piece is really intended to be a comprehensive look at what really is important to the company. So this past 2021 January 21 was kind of an incredulous experience. We gathered a lot of really terrific momentum, again, in particular regarding the digital environment that we created, and it began to give us new ways of understanding that this is going to be an ongoing way that we deepen our storytelling, that we enable our brands to connect with consumers in provocative means. And so we began to look, here was some interesting feedback that we got, which was really affirmative in that regard. So our little experiment of the Life Lab, really was a pretty tremendous breakthrough. Even in an environment at CES, people really felt like we did a great job. Our influencers were right behind us, talking about the important messages that we were trying to convey. One of the kind of wonderful design objectives that we saw come through in the content and the response, we were a little worried that the environment itself would overwhelm the actual innovations and or the messages, but so much of what we got through was a really healthy balance of both, while P&G creating the future of how we're going to be all connected and connecting to brands and companies, but also importantly, our innovations came through just as strong or even stronger than in past physical executions. So it began to teach us that yes, both the company and our individual brands can serve in balance in this world and create a provocative experience. And here's just some fun. So there's Mr. Taylor in avatar form. As we were orienting him to the Life Lab, he had a enjoyable time, and then we wanted to try to do things like get a group shot. We've done this a lot in the physical sense, but here are all the people that were working at the Life Lab in their avatar form and getting together for their group avatar shot. So just try to appreciate and honor the people that went on an incredible learning experience themselves as they began to understand how to use the Life Lab platform in a virtual way to celebrate their individual brands. Innovation was really a tremendous lift, and doing so inside of 4 months was kind of incredible. Showed the company can be incredibly agile, which is amazing. So now we have this kind of Life Lab everyday platform, and we're really looking at how do we continue to use it going forward, because we did design it really honestly for the long term. We began to see and understand at CES that these aspects I've covered a little bit around deepening our innovation storytelling, but also it could allow us to tell a different and related story to the physical world. It provided this ongoing platform of communication and connection that was much more rich than, say, a website, but also required just a different sense of how you storytell within it. And so we were often a really fantastic learning journey. And now that some of our signature platforms where we try to really influence, Cannes is a place that we do show up every year as a means of demonstrating to the creative community what matters to us and what type of creative work that we want. And we'll be using the Life Lab as Cannes itself has also gone to an all virtual environment. And again, for us, a way to celebrate and discuss with partners the kind of creative work that we want and to attract the best creative talent on our businesses and brands. We'll be using it over the summer in the context of our sustainability story, particularly in September as we look to Climate Week, the importance of our company's efforts to really pursue and enable us to meet our 2030 goals, and how our Life Lab can be a key component to reaching audiences that frankly would not necessarily be able to hear or reach us in traditional means. And then, one of our other signature programs with the Olympics, as you can well know, it's no longer Tokyo 2020, it's Tokyo 2021. And the recent announcement that Tokyo unfortunately will not be allowing for international visitors in has thrown us a new wrench, but one which we're being agile and responding. And so we're going to be using the Life Lab as a means to continue our customer engagement program, which has always been a big part of our success of our Olympic program to drive customer connections with P&G. We'll be using the Life Lab in that way to reach those customers that will now not be able to travel to Tokyo, but use it in such a way that they can be a part of our experience, hear about our innovations, and work with our local customer teams on what future developments they can be doing together. So here is a quick look at what this is, a schematic, if you will, of what we intended to build in Tokyo. And this is actually in process. And so we're excited to execute the program. It will be very different than it was originally envisioned. But one of the reasons why we're committed to moving forward safely is, in particular, this will be a big showcase for our SK2 business, which obviously has been dramatically impacted the past year because a big part of their business is in the travel space. But this is a Japanese brand, and so at its core, we wanted to just affirm our support for Japan and to celebrate the heritage of SK2 and kind of bring it back as the world starts to open up a bit. So this exhibit will be largely dedicated to our SK2 business, as well as our Japanese customer engagement program, which will continue on at the Olympics. So I'll finish with just a few quick, thoughts for you, hopefully, as you can glean from the discussion this morning, and then I'm happy to turn it to some questions. As we began to understand how to leverage, again, and think about utilization of a virtual environment or digital environment, a couple of things began to emerge that we needed to absolutely continue to maintain our laser focus on the consumer, our objectives that we set about for the work, and the success measures. Operating and creating in a virtual environment can seem like an endless world of possibilities. It can be a little overwhelming, honestly, because you can almost build anything. But as we really focused on what were the consumer takeaways we wanted from the experience and what were our business objectives for doing it, and how do we build synergy with the physical one, a lot of the attributes for what we should build became incredibly clear. We utilized these technologies, particularly the gaming platform, to allow us to create a complementary yet deep, engaging experience. We obviously could not have built in the physical world that Oral-B I/O experience that was super cool in the virtual world, but also the physical world gives you a different sense of how to engage and connect with our innovation. So thinking about how those two environments and the storytelling that you have within each can complement and accelerate your message is important. Again, we tried to stay really true to the things that we felt were really working well within our physical experience, our first 2 years of exhibiting at CES, and think about how we could carry those over into the virtual. This notion of really connecting with the diverse people and innovators and marketers who were part of the journey of developing these breakthrough innovations was a huge piece of what differentiated us in a very cluttered physical world market at CES. And carrying that forward into the virtual was not only critical, but allowed us to stand out as well. We've built this for the long term. The platform, the Life Lab Everyday platform, has been built with an eye towards thinking about it for many years, but also the potential to reskin it really quickly so that we can pivot smartly and move into different environments with relevant messaging with ease. So that gives us a lot of flexibility and inherent use for the Life Lab going forward. And then, I will say, this is maybe directed at me, but don't be afraid to teach yourself a new trick. I'd never really built anything in a virtual world before. This was a massive learning curve, but we had a tremendous team of people who were partnering with us both across the company and with external partners to help us make this work. And it was a fantastic learning opportunity and a real privilege to help the company to see that this was going to be, this is the way of the future, and to do so successfully in our first experiment, by the good graces of so many people in the company that, as I know all of you experienced in your tenure at P&G, the privilege that you have of working with some of the most talented individuals in the world who pulled this together, both internally and then also externally. So those were some of the highlights from a learning standpoint. So with that, I think I'm done. Again, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute privilege. I wish I could see more of you, but I'll turn it open. Ileana will open up to some questions and see what might come from people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A lot of congratulations are coming through for you, and then for the wonderful work that has been done, and the pivot that I think you've accomplished. So several questions coming in, starting off with, oops, they keep coming in and it's moving for me. Give me 1 second. I lost my first question. Okay, there's definitely a lot of congratulations coming in, and it just keeps moving. How is P&G thinking differently about workplace design, given the residual impacts of COVID?
Such a great question. I do partner a lot with a terrific team of people internally who are really thinking about this dynamic. I think we're really looking at the physical workplace and discussing what is its role going forward. Clearly, the past several months have given us a lot of understanding of how to use the technology to stay connected with people and teams and whatnot. But as all of you know, I think part of the secret strength of P&G are those relationships and connections that you make. Not that you can't do those virtually, but maybe they're just a little bit different. So I think the physical workplace will become a place where teams come to do work that is unique to connecting with other people and do that work effectively. In addition to training, connecting as a manager with younger people in particular in the organization to ensure they're getting the kind of development that is a classic component of being and working within P&G. But we're also maintaining the dynamics of safety for our employees and being really careful and cautious for how and how far we open those up. But I would absolutely suspect that our work physical places will shift in terms of its purpose and balance itself between the need to necessarily have to go in every day just to go in and go do meetings and phone calls, when I could do some of that here and focus a bit more on the activity of how do I partner and connect with teams. How do I really develop, when there are cross-skilled, cross-functional people that need to come together to solve for challenges. I think our physical environment will begin to shift to really enable those teams to be their most effective. Hey, Ileana, can I move to do I stop sharing my screen? I still have my.
Yes, we can. Let me pull.
Okay.
And we can stop.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Great. I'm waving my hands around a lot, and I don't know if I'm covering myself up.
Of course.
As I do.
So how do you think about the rate of investment about something like LifeLab? Is it something that you measure, or do you just believe the intangibles will pay out?
It's a great question. And it's a combination of both, absolutely. I mean, we did put forward some very clear success criteria, and frankly, even aligned that ultimately with David, Mark, Kathy, Javier Pulit at the time was one of our other major sponsors. In regards to, we were able to measure how many customers we were able to go through. What were the programmatic constructs that came across as a result of those connections in and around CES? How many partner opportunities came to us as by virtue of that that platform and opening up the Life Lab? how many talent applied to our organization as a construct of learning more about it. So we had some very clear success criteria. Not all of it obviously was NOS based, but I will tell you, like, for example, the oral care team, which has just done a fabulous job of understanding and utilizing the platform of CES and beyond, they really now see it as a critical part of their launch model, because out in advance, they're finding that appropriate window when the technology and innovation is ready, but it's not, you know, officially launched. But they're growing their influencer base, they're growing their content online, they're growing anticipation. So by the time it is available, there's this huge audience of anticipation of people that are already anticipating the innovation, and they really see it as an accelerator for launching their innovation now. So to me, those are some of the, when the businesses are queuing up to say we want to be a part of it, that means you've got the right metrics and the right objectives in place.
Do you see that the next wave of innovation will switch from tech to design?
Well, gosh, you know, you're asking the chief design officer, so I'll try not to be biased in my response. No, I actually think it's the same side of a experiential coin, right? And anymore, I actually feel one of the things that we're trying to drive within the company is the fact that, you know, for example, winning in digital commerce does not mean that we must also win in digital commerce, but do so sustainably, right? Yes, embedded technologies will be a vital part of our innovations going forward, but in a way that in many cases, those embedded technologies, if done really well, are well designed so they're almost invisible to the consumer. So the experience is simple and easy to access, yet also is embedded with the technology that really makes that innovation relevant to them. So I kind of see it, it's not either or, it's kind of a yes and.
How do you foresee actually, do you foresee an integration of virtual techniques into the physical world, like, for example, POS, you know, at the point of sale displays and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're already embedding things like in some of our packaging. You can hold, you know, your phone up to the package and jump into a mixed reality construct. I think, you know, obviously this has unleashed an incredible array of opportunities, from how to create a really compelling and for us irresistible consumer experience, we call it, right? And I think it will mandate us to think not only about winning in the physical world, but also winning in the digital, and how those complement and frankly accelerate each other. So it's going to be a yes and in that world too.
In your perspective, how can we create a similar Lead with Love project or program for the service sector? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Gosh, that's such a great question. You know, I think our Lead with Love campaign came about very naturally and intuitively as an extension of our work when we kind of reestablished our priorities when the pandemic really first hit. Again, it was to, you know, first and foremost, focus on the health and safety of our employees and partners, to make, pack, and shift the products that consumers really needed to keep their homes happy, healthy, safe, hygienic, and then show up as a force for good and growth and help communities in need. I don't know if we could have launched a Lead with Love campaign if we did not literally go almost community by community and put very focused effort and very legitimate kind of, if you will, types of help, whether that was product, whether that was cash, whether that was using our voice to convene, you know, companies to talk about things like racial inequities. So I think the Lead with Love campaign, first and foremost, came out of a very natural, credible source. I wouldn't necessarily just start one just for the sake of starting one. I would look at what are the intuitive and credible sources from which you can pull to step into a Lead with Love like campaign. But the service industry, by nature of its being, I think being in service to, you know, communities, people, it can have a first line of interaction, which can give it a lot of places by which to show up and connect and help. My only advice in that space is, depending upon your company, depending upon your organization, to really be true to what the the principles of the company are, so that you're not showing up just frankly looking like you're trying to greenwash the construct, but it's a really lovely and genuine extension of the values of the company that have been in place for a long time. And I think, as many of you know, this is an inherent, helping communities in need has been a part of our company since its very inception. And so bringing that forward a bit felt opportune. It was an opportune time, but it was also one of very, very based in genuine intent.
How do you ensure a consistent P&G equity through all of this, so that the tech itself doesn't run away from you without making it ownable and durable?
It's such a great question. We were really worried about. I was really worried about that when we first started, building this platform. And I just kept thinking, this is not. Yes, I want the CES Life Lab, environment to be super cool, and reiterate to the world that P&G really understands the future of how marketing and connecting brands to consumers is going to undergo. But I didn't want it to get out in front of our innovation, because at the end of the day, consumers don't buy the P&G Life Lab. Consumers buy our brands. So we really tried to balance that combination of equities that were consistent. As we moved to the virtual environment, we looked back at the physical one and said, what were things we wanted to extend? Almost what were the iconic assets of the physical world that we wanted to continue to convey inside of the virtual world? And then again, create a platform and an environment that connected the portfolio of P&G brands, yet allowed each one to be celebrated. So it was this fine balance of pulling P&G equities, far enough, but then frankly allowing the individual brands and innovations to have a space where they could really accentuate and celebrate their unique innovation and their equities. So as you stepped into the Oral-B IO experience, it became very blue. We had allowed Oral-B to really run. It was a showcase of their technology, but it came through a platform that was branded as P&G. So it was just being really careful and cautious to understand the few iconic assets of the company, bring that to bear, and then allow the individual brands to really be celebrated. So a bit of a nuanced construct, but I hope we found that right balance.
Couple more questions, although we could stay here, it seems like, for another half hour. Just questions keep coming in. How have you taken these learnings into an ongoing template for engagement with consumers and customers going forward, separate from CES?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we're learning. I will absolutely say that. I mean, in September of last year, I kept using the language, this is an experiment. This is an experiment. We've not done this before. So, but it really did prove that we could connect with audiences around the world in a different way. It won't replace a physical construct. So you have to think about, how do I use the technology and the virtual platform a little bit differently? But we designed it for use, not just at CES, but at these other major places where our company is enhancing and continuing to build our reputation and innovation and being a force for good and growth in creativity. So we'll use it at Cannes here at the end of June as a platform for us to really attract the world's best creative talent and say, look, P&G is pushing out into the cutting edge of how we're going to be connecting, how we see it's important for us to connect with consumers. And if you've got an idea for us to do that, bring it. But it also is, we're upping our game, so we hope you are too, sending a pretty powerful message. As I mentioned, for the Olympics, we're going to use it as a really great customer engagement tool. We've been terrific, I think, about using these major platforms as a means for us to connect with our customer base. We don't just, show up and do CES. We invite our customers to come along. Will you do that same thing around the Olympics? because that's been, again, another proven showcase. We're inviting our customers in to have a unique Olympic money can't buy experience by virtue of our P&G sponsorship, has really emboldened our relationships, particularly with customers in the host markets. But then again, we've continued to build those relationships. So, for example, the Brazilian customers that came to our Rio Olympic experience have been a part of our Pyeongchang experience and will continue to be a part of our Tokyo experience. So by virtue of the fact that they can't physically travel, the Life Lab gives us a wonderful way to continue to build on those relationships that we established in the physical world, and still, frankly, wow them with our innovation and our commitment to partnership.
Awesome. Well, we only have like a couple more minutes left, and we still have a lot of questions. So any final thoughts? I loved one question about your legacy. What do you feel your legacy will be?
Oh my gosh, like my personal one, my personal legacy, maybe I've helped the company be a better place. How about that? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to think about one's personal legacy in the amazing company that I think we've all had the privilege of working with and for. And that's a really good question. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, first and foremost, I hope that I'll stay close to home, that the design of our brands and the people that work in our design community love their work, that they have been given opportunities to showcase their talent. And so I hope I leave the design team in a better place than when I found it. And by virtue of the amazing talented people that we have in it, I think that we're in a good stead. I came, interestingly, I came back to P&G. I left the company. I came to P&G in the early 90s. I made the unusual choice to leave the company after 5 or 6 years. And then I came back after 13 years absence. And I came back to do two things. I came back to learn again, to challenge my kind of, intellectual curiosity. And I came back to make an impact, a positive impact. I came back to change the world for the better. I came back to yes, build wonderful products and packaging and experiences for consumers, but to do so sustainably, to do so meaningfully, to do so to meet the needs of more and varied and diverse consumers whose needs might have been forgotten by the mass markets, if you will, to think about inclusivity differently, to think about really how we delight the world's consumers, and yet at the same time do so in a sustainable and compelling way. Maybe that's a long way of answering that question, but I don't know, kind of like you all, it's been a privilege and an absolute honor these past 12 years to have been in this role. I can't believe the experiences and the opportunities that have come my way. So maybe one other point of my legacy is to hopefully give somebody else and a few others the opportunity to do the same thing after me.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing us this incredible experience and all your learnings and your legacy. And and I'll go to our last couple of slides. Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you so much. So thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute honor. So thank you.